Enfold Proactive Health Trust, Creating Safe Spaces, presents Demystifying Sexuality, a video series. How does sexual identity develop in children? Presented by Dr. Shoiba Saldana, co-founder, Enfold Proactive Health Trust, obstetrician and gynecologist.
Hi, I'm Dr. Shoiba Saldana. I'm a gynecologist by profession, but a sexuality activist by choice. I have been studying about the development of the human body for the last 40 years. And have you been as amazed as I have at the way the human body, development of the human body, completely mirrors the process of evolution? We started at single cells as an amoeba, developed into multicellular organisms, developed into further in fine functional organization, and have reached this human body today. A human body which has an outer layer, which consists of our hair and skin, sweat glands, oil glands, a middle inside layer, which is your heart, your lungs, your kidneys, your liver, your intestines, and then a middle layer between the inner and the outer layer, which holds everything together with the muscles and the ligaments and the fibers. Now, every human being goes through this development. It's unique, and yet everybody goes through the same. But there is one particular system which is even more specific for each human being, and that is called the reproductive system. Originally, when society was developing across millennia, because there was the idea that in sexual reproduction there is an egg and a sperm, it was presumed that there are only two types of bodies. One body which holds the egg and the other body which holds the sperm. And whenever they meet, the new pregnancy or the new baby or the new human being would develop. And unfortunately, society at large and biologists and doctors in particular continue to maintain that there were just two types, and we ended up with a binary system in the reproductive system. That means you had a male body and a female body. Unfortunately, patriarchy coming into our social systems further reinforced it by ensuring that male or masculinity and female or femininity had certain specific stereotypical physical attributes, behaviors, skills, and social roles. As society has developed further, and especially in the last 100 years, we have realized that's not true. It is impossible to label a person as just male or female. Sexuality of each human being is unique. Now, WHO defines sexuality as a way a person experiences themselves and expresses themselves. It is physical, biological, emotional, mental, social. It is erotic, it is spiritual. There are so many facets of sexuality for a person, and that is what makes a human being's sexuality unique for them. Whether we look across the world, whether you look at Inuit, whether you look at the Maasai tribes people, whether you look at Southeast Asians, whether you look at Japanese, Fijians, Peruvian, Chinese, there will always be the same sort of a structure created of male and female, and we have docketed in them. But as we have realized, there have always been people, and there continue to be more and more people who refuse to be docketed within these narrow binary processes. Now, when we look at the fact that as the egg and the sperm meet, the entire chromosomal picture of the human being, of your programming, your body programming starts from there. And out of those, there are these very important ones called the X and Y. Now, these chromosomes were called the sex chromosomes, and when they meet, they sort of tell you whether you are a male or a female, so XX and XY. There are, even at this level, different ways. There are not just XX, XY, there could be X0, there could be XXY, there could be XYY. And so even at this point, we don't have a binary. The majority may fall between XX and XY, but there will be many who fall outside this majority. Depending on the XX or the XY, there is a hormones which are stimulated, and we have gonads. Now, the gonads are common. As the ovary or the testes, depending on the XX, XY, they start secreting hormones which create a structure of the body, a physical structure in the body. So the physical structure says, okay, if it's an XX, it creates a uterus, it creates a vagina, fallopian tubes. If it is under XY control, that gonad becomes a testes, and that secretes testosterone, which creates a penis, it creates scrotum, a prostate gland, and there for the first time in this body, there is a differentiation in the two bodies. It is only when the child is born that the first question I'm always asked as a gynecologist is it a boy or a girl? But imagine there are at least 1 in 1,500 children who are born with genitals which do not conform to either the typical male or the typical female external genitals. So when I examine a child and I find that I'm not able to decide whether this is a typical male or a typical female, the medical profession calls it ambiguous genitalia. Now imagine if a doctor comes out and tells people, I don't know if it's a boy or a girl. And unfortunately, that's when we label the child as boy or girl, and that is what we call the gender of the child. The gender of a child is a social construct. Now, you and I as a doctor and the parents may be confused about the gender of the child, but the child themselves knows their gender identity, and they may, as they grow and they develop further, be able to express, I am a girl, I am a boy, I am neither, and these sort of processes continue. But they will start expressing it as they grow older, when they're 2 or 3 years old, even earlier sometimes, but usually 2 to 3 years old as children become more autonomous and they start moving around on their own and they show their wishes in terms of clothes and colors and movement, and they start following a particular role model. So they may role model the same gender parent. Then their sexual identity starts getting expressed, and that's when we really know who is this child. And I would ask another question. Is that really important? For us to know so that we put the child into a particular box? Oh, it's a boy. This child thinks he is a boy, so he should wear these clothes and he should run and jump and play like this. And this child is a girl, so we have to put her into this box where she should wear these clothes and speak like this and sit like this and talk like this and behave like this. And that is where, as a society, we fail every child when we try to push them into this gendered sexual identity. How the gendered perspective of society affects children, I'd like to give you an example of that. I had a young woman who came to me, she was 24 years old. And she came and sat down in front of me and she said, "Doctor, I wanted to know if you can remove my breasts." I said, "I'm sorry?" And she said, "No, I want to know if you can operate and remove both my breasts." So I was a little stunned and I said, "Why?" She says, "I have horrible pain in my breasts." And I said, "Well, that's normal to have a little pain in the breast just before the periods. And some people have it, can be quite severe. And then it goes away after your periods." And she said, "No, my breasts have been painful ever since they started growing when I was 11 years old." And so I started asking her a little bit more about her history, and I found out that her parents came from a middle class background. She had 2 elder sisters, and when she was 9 years, when the sisters were 9 years and 7 years, she was conceived. In between, her mother had had 3-4 terminations, and I was not sure, but there seemed to me some sort of indication that they had probably done sex determination before birth and may have aborted it, though they absolutely refused. She said, "No, I don't think so." But all 3 of the terminations had been done by the 3rd or 4th month. Anyway, she was conceived, and somehow her parents were totally conceived that it was a boy. And when she was born and it was a girl, she even had a name. Her father gave her a name which could be a boy or a girl. And she grew up in that family as if she was a boy. And she said, "I was like a boy to my father. I would fight with the children. I would run harder. I could bully my 2 sisters. I could do anything my father wanted me to do." And somehow he would always say, "This is my son, this is my son." And I was so proud of that. And then one day, when I was 11 years old, my period started. And I could no more be, I felt, the boy that he wanted. And so thereafter, I have disliked my uterus, disliked my breasts, and today I have come to you, doctor, to ask, can you remove them? Now, I don't know whether she herself felt uncomfortable in a girl's body, whether she may have been or is transgender, or it was just the social need to be loved by her parents, which tried to make her always pretend to be the boy, the son that her father wanted. I also realized later, and she gave me the history, that her father was alcoholic and he passed away when she was about 14 or 15 years old. So I'm not sure about the dynamics in the family which further created this extremely toxic environment for this young child to grow up in. I give this as an example to show how much society affects it, and I'm sure so many of you must have heard comments from parents and other family members. "Oh, you had another girl," or "another boy." And always there seems to be this sense that the child is not right. This shouldn't have been the child which was born. And you can imagine how this impacts a child. Children start by expressing their gendered identity as they start growing up. In the beginning, when the child is born, all the child wants to be is to be held, kept warm, fed, and protected. They cry when they feel dissatisfied. They're hungry, they're wet, they're feeling cold, they're bored, they want to see a human face, they want to listen to somebody's voice, and they cry. After a little while, they start growing, and as they develop, they start walking. And unfortunately, in human beings, we are so tied up with their ability to pass stools and pass urine. We're constantly cleaning that area. And children realize that, adults are so fascinated by this part because we feed the child 10 times in the day and we keep wiping the mouth. And then we keep running around every time the baby pees. "Oh, baby's passed urine. Oh, baby's passed stools." And the kid really realizes that my parents and my general family are very excited about this part. So they start off realizing that there are organs over there which are of interest. So as they grow older, there's a lot of curiosity about these parts. And yet children, when they're 2, 3, 4 years, you should know, and I'm sure you realized when you were younger, that children don't like wearing clothes. And they come out of the bath, they come running out like, "Yay, I'm free," and they ran out. And unfortunately, they would be sometimes met with adults who would go, "Shame, what is this? Dirty child." And the kid would be like, "Who? Me? What did I do? I'm clean, I just had a bath." And then they slowly realize that there is one part of the body which is considered dirty or shameful or embarrassing. And they realize there is this triangular part of the body which, when it is covered with a cloth, adults seem to be okay with it. So obviously, there's something not okay about this part. Plus, as is natural with children, when they grow up in a family which is more or less traditional, they will not have parents walking around naked, adults walking around naked. So there is this curiosity about this part of the body. In fact, young children will often say, "What are you doing when you're going to the bathroom? I want to see." And so at this age, between 4, 5, 6, when children slightly move away from the constant attention of the adults around them, and they start exploring. And so they go into, "What do you have? What do I have?" And they pull down their pants and they look at each other and see. And there is a deep curiosity, and it's just curiosity. Sometimes we've had people who've gone and caught up with them and saying, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this? This is very dirty." And yet it's not. It is just an understanding of their own bodies. But it causes shame and guilt at this point of time in the child's mind connected to this part. And even here in society, there is a gender bias. Because boys have to hold their penis to pee, the natural touching of the penis is accepted for boys. So, touching the penis, touching the genitals is given a certain amount of social sanction. However, girls on the other end are told that's dirty, don't touch it. And as they grow older and they start getting white discharge and they start getting their periods, even more strongly is this part put into a space of, "This is dirty, don't touch it." keep it clean, wash your hands after you touch that part, creating a sense of disconnect. If you had a bag which was dirty, you would carry it away from your body. You would not hold it close. And so somehow, for a lot of girls, they get disconnected from this part. And this I have seen in young women who come to me who don't even know what's down there. They have not been encouraged to explore, and they have not been encouraged to see it. And we often tell young girls, just put a mirror there and see what you have. That's part of your body. How will you take care of it if you don't know what is there? As children start developing, by 2, 3, 4 years of age, they become clear about their gender identity. Now, if their gender identity in their head is the same as their body, so this is a female body and she thinks I am a girl, this is gender conforming, she is called cisgender. If this is a male body and this person says I am a male, I am a boy, again gender conforming, cisgender. But sometimes some children are like, I don't know whether I'm a boy or a girl, and they are sometimes gender neutral. And on the other hand, we have a child who has a girl's body and says, I'm a boy. This is called transgender. It means that your gender is not the same as your body. You are gender non-conforming. Similarly, there can be a male body, but the person in their mind thinks, I'm a girl. This person is a transgender. So in their own minds, they're pretty clear that they could be gender conforming or non-conforming, and they start gender roles. They start copying the parent who follows the same, who's the same gender as who they are in their identity. So cisgender children, the boys will behave like their fathers. I'm going to go to office, I'm going to drive the car, I'm going to work on the computer. And as in very, very traditional houses, there is a deep divide between how men and women function. They call the girls will conform to the mother, like I need to cook and I'll play house. And there are so many places where they play out the gender roles that they see around them. In houses which are non-conforming, where both the parents, both the partners are equal in the division of house and outside work, the children grow up with much less stresses about gender roles. As the gender identity starts developing, the children now come through 6, 7, 8 years and the beginnings of puberty start coming in. So the early part of the growth of this child into an adult starts. And as we know, the entire process of adolescence, which makes this child into an adult human being, is inherently the complete formation of the reproductive system. What was there in the baby and at birth, which was nascent, is now developing fully for this person to be an adult who can be reproductive, have reproductive functions as they wish. Unfortunately, in society, we always have people who tend to try to group kids in. So the questions that children are asked are, so when are you going to get married? Girls are asked, so will you find a nice boy? Boys are asked, so which girl are you interested in? Our language is heteronormative. It shows male primacy, that when you get married and go away, we tell the girl that, we don't tell the boy that. And monogamous, that all couples should be together for life. These are actually the structured remnants of a patriarchal society, and they somehow reduce our ability to affirm each person's uniqueness. So as the child starts developing and goes through puberty, the gender identity becomes more crystallized. They may be a boy, they may be girl, they may be gender non-conforming, they may be gender fluid, they may be neutral gender. There are so many different spectrum across which they may fall. As I develop and I understand my gender identity, my next part is, who am I attracted to? I need a partner. And so in that partner, it becomes my sexual orientation. Who am I attracted to? Am I attracted to the same gender? To many people, different people? Am I pansexual? Am I asexual? Am I not interested sexually in anybody? So there are so many levels of my sexual orientation which may come through. And this is where my gender identity and my sexual orientation gets understood. However, in our society, because we don't allow children to be anything but in this binary places, there is a lot of confusion, sometimes shame, a deep feeling that there's something wrong with me, that I was born wrong. And it is very, very important as a society that we affirm each person's gender identity, their sexual orientation, and they have the right to live the way they perceive and experience themselves to be.
This video is part of a series of videos and learning content aimed at addressing gender-based violence. These videos provide practitioner perspectives by professionals and experts in the field. We hope these videos generate further discussions with peers, family members and teachers, encourage curiosity, and seed further research ideas in these domains. We gratefully acknowledge the following for their support: Gaurav Krishna, Keshav Rajendran, Ishwar Shankar, Mohan Ram, Clockwork Captions, Enfold Consultants, Ford Foundation. The copyright and other intellectual property rights in respect of this video belong exclusively to Enfold Proactive Health Trust, Enfold. Enfold licenses this video under the terms of Creative Commons License CC BY-NC-ND 4.0, the details of which can be found at https://creativecommonlicense.org/licenses/by-NC-ND/4.0/. Any use or reproduction of this video contrary to or in violation of the terms of the aforesaid Creative Commons license will be illegal, and Enfold reserves the right to take suitable action in respect thereof. Enfold also reserves the right to modify, terminate or revoke the license granted as aforesaid, or otherwise exercise any and all rights in respect of its intellectual property without further notice, and the same shall be binding on the licensee or user or reader thereof. June 2021. Enfold Proactive Health Trust. www.enfoldindia.org. Contact info@enfoldindia.org +91 99 000 94251 www.enfoldindia.org.